Hello there, and welcome back to Talking Blue. My name is Tom Connors, and with me is Andre.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
And the leading authority in home media, Bill Hunt of the Digital Bits.
Howdy, it's good to be back again.
Today we're going to finish our discussion of Catalogue 4K and Blu-ray titles. We got a few more studios to get through, so gentlemen, why don't we get right to it?
Moving on then to Universal Studios.
So Universal has also been fairly aggressive with 4K catalog, and that's going to continue this year. Starting on April 10th, The Incredible Hulk is coming out on 4K Ultra HD. That's the 2008 film with Ed Norton as Bruce Banner. And I believe that is its 10th anniversary. I think that will be the first MCU catalog film.
It will in the US, yes.
Yeah, because the Iron Man films were released in Europe, but not here. So in the US, that'll be the first MCU catalog film on 4K, and that should be, remastered, full negative scan, and, with high dynamic range, all that sort of thing. So that's big news. Then the real big news from Universal is that they are releasing on May 22nd the Jurassic Park 20th Anniversary Collection in 4K Ultra HD. And that is going to include, obviously, Jurassic Park, the Lost World Jurassic Park 3, and Jurassic World. And all of that's going to be timed to promote the theatrical release of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which will later this year obviously join those films on 4K. And now, I don't know about Jurassic World. I think Jurassic World might have been a digital intermediate, so that might be a 2K upsample. But the 3 earlier films will all be 4K negative scans. And all 4 of them are going to feature DTS:X audio. So that should make fans pretty excited. It'd be really interesting to see how good those films look in 4K. And that's obviously, I would imagine, going to sell pretty well. There are a lot of fans of those films.
Oh yeah, I bet there'll be a big driver on the format.
I think a lot of people, are going to be excited about that. Now, looking ahead, there are a couple more films from Universal that make sense on 4K, especially early on. And given the push to get a lot of Spielberg stuff out on the format, they would seem like obvious choices. The first of those is Jaws, and I have no doubt that Universal is already got in mind and maybe already planning it. I don't believe they have a plan to release that film this year on 4K Ultra HD. December is the 25th anniversary of Schindler's List. So that might be an obvious title to see come from Universal in 4K Ultra HD. And 2 other films we know that they've prepared, I know that they've done 4K scans and they're preparing releases for, are the 2010 Robin Hood film, directed by Ridley Scott, and The Big Lebowski celebrates its 20th anniversary this year, and I know they've prepared a 4K scan of that, then that's likely to come out in 4K this year as well. So it'll be interesting to see what else they announce. I would love to see, for example, even though they're black and white, I would love to see the classic Universal Monsters films released in 4K Ultra HD. That's probably a pull. I mean, because they're just now finishing. I think this year they're going to finish The Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Invisible Man sets on Blu-ray. But it would be interesting to see the marquee Universal monster films, Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, that sort of thing, like the 4 or 5 kind of marquee titles released in a 4K Ultra HD package to see how well they would do. Well, it'll be interesting to see. The other one that I would love to see them do is go back and do a really, really good 4K scan of Flash Gordon, because I think that film would look tremendous in 4K Ultra HD with high dynamic range and object-based audio. That film could be a lot of fun in 4K.
I'm kind of surprised they haven't yet. But back to Spielberg in Jaws, didn't they scan it in 4K when they did the remastering for the latest Blu-ray, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, they did indeed. And so really the question is when does it make sense to release it on the schedule? My guess is we'll see it. They've been, like I said, they've been very aggressive. Spielberg's been very aggressive getting his best films on the format. And so my guess is if we don't see it this year, that could be an obvious choice for next year. I have a sneaking suspicion that Schindler's List will come out. And I think from Paramount, you could imagine War of the Worlds coming out. I could also see AI getting a 4K release. I could see Munich getting a 4K release. Those are fairly obvious choices. As far as Raiders of the Lost Ark, boy, that is in the hands of Disney. And I have a sneaking suspicion that we're not going to see any of the Raiders films on 4K until they do their next sequel, which is supposed to start in 2019 or whatever they start filming or something. So my guess is Raiders is going to be a while. But I would think Munich would make sense. I would think Lincoln would make sense. I would think Jaws makes sense. So Spielberg has got a lot of catalog yet to mine. Also, AI, as I mentioned, I think those are obvious choices.
There are 2 Universal titles that I would really like to see. One is Apollo 13.
Well, so Apollo 13 has already been released on 4K Ultra HD. That film looks great in 4K. That's a great 4K release. I highly recommend you pick that one up. Anybody who doesn't have it, that's a good one to get.
A movie that I really want to see in 4K Blu-ray that Universal have the rights to in the US. Conan the Barbarian with Schwarzenegger.
Oh, yeah. Conan the Barbarian would make a great 4K release. I've got to believe that's a film that they would be considering. It conceivably has an anniversary or maybe coming up. But you're absolutely right. That film would look great in 4K. And it would really, I think, benefit from high dynamic range as well. So I would imagine you can expect that to be a title that they consider releasing at some point in the near future.
See, my muscles are too beautiful for 4K.
I have a feeling. I'll have to ask him about that, because that would be a great title for 4K.
I would imagine it would be something that they would want to tie in with Amazon's in development Conan series.
Yep, that's exactly right. You can almost guarantee if there is a new project or a reboot based on, on a beloved property, that's exactly when the studio decides to come out. It's perfect marketing. They call it synergy or whatever. They release it when there's a new remake coming out. They release the originals. It all ties together. They can create a whole big, advertising promotional push on it. That's one of the reasons why we haven't seen, for example, from Disney, The Black Hole or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea on Blu-ray, is because the studio for years has been sort of toying with the idea in various stages of development, rebooting those two films, and they've been waiting to release them on Blu-ray when the new movie came out, just like they did with Tron Legacy, with the original Tron on Blu-ray. There are a lot of obvious titles that haven't even made it to Blu-ray yet that are being held back, for hope of a relaunch. So you can almost guarantee that when something like that happens, it makes perfect sense.
With that out of the way, let's move on to Warner.
Now, Warner Brothers has, I would say, so in terms of the 4K catalog titles that they've announced for this year, there's only 2. But I will tell you that both of these catalog titles are titles I'm really, really looking forward to in 4K Ultra HD. The first one especially. This is probably my #1 title on any format that I'm most looking forward to. They are releasing on May 8th a 2001: A Space Odyssey 50th anniversary edition, and they've done a brand new scan, like high resolution scan, like, so we're talking it's 70 millimeters, so they would have scanned this in higher than 4K resolution. And they've recently restored the film, and I saw last year at the American Cinematheque for the first time in my life. I'm a huge fan of this film. I've loved this film my entire life, and I've seen it probably 100 times in the theater and on DVD, on Blu-ray. But last year I had the chance to see a brand new 70mm print of 2001 at the American Cinematheque in Hollywood. And I will tell you, it is a completely different film in 70mm. And I understand now why people, fans like in the 60s and 68 when it came out in 70mm, people flipped out. And I get it now. I totally get it now, because when you see it in 70mm, it is a jarring, in-your-face experience. It really is a startling film to see in that kind of resolution and that kind of a big screen. And obviously, this 4K disc will have been mastered from 70mm. It will look and sound amazing. So this is bar none the disc I'm most excited about right now.
I second that. I am a huge fan of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Depending on which day you ask me, it is either my favorite movie of all time or my second or third favorite movie of all time, but definitely in the top 3. And that top 3 is going to be a little bit fluid from day to day. But anyway, I love that movie. Not only do I love the movie, I love the novel it is in part based upon, or rather, the novel and the movie were developed side by side. And the novel was written by Arthur C. Clarke, who happens to be my second favorite author, after Robert E. Howard. So yes, that movie I cannot wait for. And then, on a related question, what are the chances for a 4K release of 2010, the year we make contact?
That's a little more up in the air. But my guess is if 2001 does really well, I think it's very likely that you'll see that as a follow-up. That is certainly a possible follow-up to this. And that film was also finished in film, so they could go back to the original negative and scan it, and all of that stuff aboard the Leonov and in orbit of Jupiter should look amazing in high dynamic range. So yeah, my guess is if 2001 sells well, you'll see 2010 will follow at some point fairly in short order. I can tell you now, the other title of the two, which I'm excited about, is the original The Matrix. That's coming out in 4K Ultra HD on May 22nd. It's scanned they went back to the original negative and rescanned it. So it'll be full native 4K. It'll be Dolby Vision high dynamic range, Dolby Atmos audio. The Blu-ray that comes in that package is also going to be remastered from The Matrix. Now, it's probably going to be true of 2001 as well, but 2001 hasn't been officially announced yet. The Matrix has, but I have confirmed it's coming. And it's obviously you can order both of these on Amazon already. Pre-order them both with cover art and the whole 9 yards. So they are both coming. But The Matrix should look tremendous. And it's only that first film. In order to remaster these films properly, the Matrix films, it's kind of a complicated process. They've got to go back to the negative and they've got to figure out how they're going to handle the visual effects and all that stuff. So my guess is if The Matrix sells well, then the two sequels will follow fairly quickly as well. But still, that original Matrix, if you look at just in terms of the quality of the film, my opinion personally, The Matrix is a seminal science fiction film, and it's groundbreaking, ahead of its time science fiction film. The two sequel films are not as good. You know, when you talk about great science fiction films, there are not a lot of people mention The Matrix these days.
I was going to say, not to be facetious, I don't think anybody's going to care if the second and third one are released or not, but the first one, yeah.
No, I totally agree. Those two sequels are just not good. But that first film is tremendous. It's an astonishing film. And I think a lot of younger fans, especially, people who haven't maybe, kind of overlooked The Matrix, I think they're going to be startled by how good that looks and just how good that film is in 4K. It should be pretty tremendous.
I'll take the Animatrix. Other than that, they can keep them.
Oh, God, the Animatrix would look phenomenal. They could release the Animatrix in 4K, and that would be a great seller. I totally agree. The Animatrix
it's just because I like the prequel portions of that a lot. It really ties in, but then after that, it just goes downhill.
Yeah, totally. And I love the experimental idea of that. You get these great animators from around the world and allow them to do kind of their own take on those stories. I think that's a fun experiment. That's an experiment that I would love to see. I would love to see them try to do something like that with Star Wars. I'd love to see them try to do something like that with Star Trek, to tell stories in the Star Trek universe and get like great animators from around the world to kind of do their own take on some of those stories. I think that's a lot of fun. So for me personally, that 2001 release is I'm more than anything else I'm looking forward to. And the other thing I'm really looking forward to, it's not 4K, but it is confirmed to be coming from Warner, specifically the Warner Archive on Blu-ray, is finally we are going to get Batman the Animated Series on Blu-ray, the complete series.
That was about time. That's long overdue, but I'm really glad it's coming.
Yeah, and they've gone back and they've got all the original negative and they're scanning all that stuff. And the great thing is if you've seen Warner Archive's Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which looks tremendous, and if you've seen, you probably haven't seen it yet because it streets on Tuesday as we're recording this. It's about a week away from streeting. But I've seen it, which is Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero on Blu-ray. And both of those discs look great, and that's going to give you a sense of how good Batman the Animated Series can look on Blu-ray. And if you're a fan of that series, not only is it probably, I think, the greatest version of Batman captured on film, either TV or the big screen, the influences for that are tremendous. They go right back to the Fleischer Superman animated series from the 40s. It was released on DVD. There was a complete DVD series box set, but that's been out of print for years now. And so the demand for this title, I think Batman the Animated Series is going to be one of the big sellers of the year on Blu-ray, and rightly so. That's a great series that has long deserved better treatment.
Yeah, I recently did a review for the Mask of the Phantasm when it came out on Blu-ray, with a little help from Tim, actually, and it looks amazing. So I can't wait for this series to hit. And I know we've talked about it a few times in passing, but I know once we get some more information, we'll definitely have to dedicate a show to that release.
Yeah, I totally agree. That release definitely deserves its own episode in terms of Talking Blu, because that's special. I've been loving Warner Brothers hard on Batman the Animated Series for years. I mean, literally 5-6 years I've been talking to Warner senior executives in Warner Archive about that series finally arriving on Blu-ray, and I'm really excited to see that Warner Archive has finally gotten the permission to do it. I think the thing about Warner Brothers is that any animated title at Warner Brothers has kind of tended to come under the kids division, the home video division, and so I think they didn't want to give it up. And the way Warner Archives works is that they only get access to the titles that the other divisions of the studios don't really want anything to do with or don't want to release themselves. So I think it's been a challenge because that Batman the Animated Series has been considered kind of a kid's title. All animation has been kind of considered a kid's title. But of course, the audience for that is huge. It's much bigger than kids. It is the best version of Batman captured on film, I think. And so I'm thrilled to see that that's finally going to get a Blu-ray release. And I just can't wait to see how good that's going to look on Blu-ray. It could really look tremendous.
And hopefully that will pave the way for Superman the Animated Series further down the line.
I have a feeling that if Batman the Animated Series does well, that Superman the Animated Series will follow. The Warner Archive has been very kind of they've been pushing hard to get a lot of the DC Animated Universe stuff out on Blu-ray. So I think that's an obvious choice. And it's interesting that you mentioned Superman, because this isn't announced yet. Nothing's announced, and I don't have insider information on either of these two titles yet, though I'm certainly going to start asking about them. But if you look ahead to the end of this year, in terms of other titles that could possibly be 4K Ultra HD releases, specifically anniversary releases, The Right Stuff in October celebrates its 35th anniversary, and the original Richard Donner Superman the Movie celebrates its 40th anniversary in December. Both of those titles would be obvious special edition anniversary Blu-ray 4K re-releases. Those would make a lot of sense. Now, I don't have any knowledge that they're coming, but looking ahead to the end of the year, those two titles make a lot of sense. So I think if they don't come out this year, I'd be surprised. And if they don't come out this year, I could see either of them coming out next year. Those are going to be high on the list of catalog titles that Warner Brothers is going to want to hit up on 4K.
Yeah, the thing with the Superman the Animated Series, I've just got to say this because I saw a few episodes of it, some select episodes over the last few months, and I contrasted that to Justice League, and these episodes cover pretty much the same ground as Justice League the movie. Superman the Animated Series did it so much better.
Yeah, that early run of DC animated titles was pretty spectacular. The DC animated cinematic universe is the ones that are actually in the continuity are pretty terrific. And the more of that can be released on Blu-ray, the better.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Superman animated series, too.
And that's what we have for Warner. So let's move on now to Walt Disney Studios.
Yeah, this is the final major studio we've got to talk about here, and I can tell you, so obviously in terms of 4K, Disney has been they've been very aggressive about releasing their brand new films in 4K Ultra HD, starting with fairly recently. Obviously looking ahead, you can expect Solo to be released in 4K, you can expect Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, A Wrinkle in Time. Those will all get 4K release. What I'm excited about right now is the fact that obviously The Incredibles 2 is coming now from Pixar, and you know that will get a 4K release, obviously, because Disney just released Pixar's Coco in 4K and it looked tremendous. But what I've heard that I'm very excited about is that the first Pixar catalog title is coming in 4K, which would be the original Incredibles, the original Brad Bird film. And that should look and sound terrific in 4K. Both of those films should be great 4K releases. That's very exciting that we'll see that. And there's one other Disney sort of 4K title that deserves a mention right now. We talked about it recently in a recent episode, which is Star Wars The Last Jedi. I've now seen the 4K Ultra HD release of Star Wars The Last Jedi, and I'll tell you this, regardless of what you think of the film, from a standpoint of picture and sound quality and just special edition features, Star Wars The Last Jedi might be one of the best new release 4K titles I've seen yet. And it's not just me. A lot of other critics agree, having seen it. The film was shot in 35mm, so it's a full native 4K scan. It's got Dolby Atmos sound. It's got Dolby Vision high dynamic range, and it's tremendous. And it looks and sounds tremendous. It's a reference quality title. But the cool thing is that it also comes with a really elaborate special edition. Now, if you're a Star Wars fan, the special edition for Force Awakens and Rogue One were both kind of disappointing. I find them disappointing compared to what could have been done for those titles. But the great thing is that it seems that Rian Johnson, who directed the film, is a big special edition experience guy, because the Blu-ray package, the 4K, which includes the Blu-ray, it includes an entire bonus disc of extras. So not only do you get an audio commentary, you get a feature-length documentary on the making of the film called The Director and the Jedi, and it's incredibly revealing. It's like old school great in terms of like Blu-ray documentaries. And I was talking, a friend of mine recently, Charles Lazzarico, who I mentioned earlier, who produced all of the documentary stuff for Alien and Gladiator and Blade Runner. He saw it recently, and he agreed that it's one of the best documentaries he's ever seen, which is saying something, because he himself has produced a lot of these great documentaries. It really is. It's revealing. It's a really interesting kind of fly-on-the-wall, behind-the-scenes look at the making of The Last Jedi, whatever you think of the film. And the special edition also includes like a whole mess of like really interesting deleted scenes, a couple other featurettes, and you get to see, like, for example, Andy Serkis performing Snoke without enhancement. So just Andy Serkis on the set, like doing the acting for the character. And then this is interesting too, which is the first time I think we've seen this on a major release in quite some time, is on the digital only side. So if you download the Movies Anywhere code that you get with the disc, and also if you buy it on iTunes, you can watch the entire film with no sound effects, with no dialogue, with only John Williams' complete isolated score. That, I'll tell you what, that is a really tremendous experience. That's a really, really cool experience. I would love to see that for every Star Wars film. If you're a fan of John Williams' music, that's a treat, let me tell you.
All right. Now, speaking of Star Wars The Last Jedi, we had talked about it in the last episode, and we said that there was no 3D release in the US announced at this time. It is overseas, and it does appear that Amazon UK is advertising that it is region free, so if you're looking for that release, you can find it there. And speaking of foreign releases, I did recently get my Thor Ragnarok 3D release, and I can answer a couple questions that came up in previous episodes. One is, yes, it is region free, both discs, and two, the 3D version is the IMAX version, so that's also something that needs to be noted for Thor Ragnarok, and it's actually a pretty neat experience in 3D. I enjoyed. I'm sure the 4K experience is great as well, but there's a lot of IMAX scenes in that film, and it's a lot of fun in 3D. So I just thought I'd point that out. You can get that through Amazon and stuff overseas, or I'm sure you can find it on eBay and other places like that if you need to.
Yeah, and I would say I would add to that. My guess is that The Last Jedi is not going to be the IMAX version, because The Force Awakens, I think, and Rogue One were both the theatrical, the 235 right. scope version, so probably not IMAX on that. But I have a feeling that that's going to be Disney's MO going forward, is that they're going to continue to do 3D. It's just they're not going to release it here in the States. It'll just be available in Europe, but they're making the European version all regions, so anybody can import if they want to. Which is good. I mean, that's as long as you've got that option to get it, that's great. As long as you know that it's going to be all region. At least if you're a fan of 3D, at least you know you're going to have that option.
All right. So is there any other big Disney news for upcoming Blu-rays in 4K, or?
That's really it. So I mentioned about The Last Jedi having Dolby Atmos audio and Dolby Vision high dynamic range. That is the first Disney 4K title to have both Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. And I suspect that all of their 4K releases going forward are going to have Atmos and Dolby Vision. So that's good. They finally kind of caught up with the sort of state-of-the-art in terms of the format. But, yeah, I just want to stress again, whatever you think of that film, whatever you think of The Last Jedi, and I know the audience is pretty polarized about that, the 4K disc is really something else. If you're a fan of the film, you're going to be really happy with the 4K disc. And even if you're not a fan of the film, but you just like a really good special edition experience and great quality, it might still be worth considering. It's pretty tremendous. I did a review of it recently on the Bits, and to go through everything took me, no kidding, almost a full day.
I do have one Disney title I can add to that. Anybody who's a member of their club, they do exclusive titles through the club on Blu-ray. And I recently noticed that one of my favorites is coming, Mighty Joe Young, the remake.
Outstanding. Yeah, the Disney Movie Club is a pretty great little thing if you're a fan of like a lot of the live-action classic Disney stuff. There's a lot of, Escape from Witch Mountain, Return to Witch Mountain.
Cool Runnings, the Shrunk the Kids series.
Yeah, The Love Bug, absolutely. A lot of those are available exclusively through their club on Blu-ray, so they tend to be pretty bare-bones discs, but they are nice transfers, and I think they're fairly inexpensive, too, so if you're into those, they're out there.
Well, Mighty Joe Young needed it desperately, because the original DVD is a rip of the Laserdisc, basically, or the same exact master, anyway.
Yeah, the transfers those Laserdisc transfers are not Blu-ray ready, for sure.
One of the few remakes I actually love quite a bit, even though I love the original too, don't get me wrong, but yeah.
Of course, I also have some requested titles for Disney as well. First and foremost, the Tron movies.
Yeah, the Tron movies would make, I think, good 4K releases. I think they actually would. I think the Tron movies especially would benefit from high dynamic range. But again, it's like the problem right now is Disney hasn't really dived much into their catalog in terms of 4K. Like, obviously, they've got like the first 10 years of Marvel films that they could put out in 4K, and the Iron Man films are available in 4K in Europe, but not directly from Disney, and Disney hasn't done anything with them here. And they own them all now. I think they were originally produced with Paramount, but they have all the rights, so it's up to Disney to do those. And obviously, there's the existing Star Wars films, especially The Force Awakens and Rogue One are obvious choices. The older films are a mystery. I know that they've got brand new 4K scans of this would be the latest special edition versions of those films. So those are possible and likely at some point, but there's been, again, like Disney's just not doing a lot with catalog. They're very committed to new releases in 4K, but they haven't shown a lot of interest in going back to catalog films yet for 4K. So we'll see. It remains to be seen. And also, frankly, a 4K release I would love to see is Tombstone. I would kill to have Tombstone on 4K, and also to have a Blu-ray release of the slightly longer version of the film. There was a great special edition that was done on DVD, and then when Tombstone came out on Blu-ray, it was the theatrical cut only. But I like that slightly longer version that came out on that really nice Vista Series DVD, and I would love to see that Vista Series DVD kind of converted to Blu-ray, and I would love to see a 4K scan of that. And I also happen to know that there is a really, really great director's cut of that film to be made. There's a really great director's cut of that film to be made. There's a lot of stuff that got cut, that was shot, that got cut. Also, the interesting story behind that film is that Kurt Russell basically ghost directed that film. The original director got fired pretty early on into filming, and Kurt Russell kept that production going. They obviously brought George P. Cosmatos in to kind of finish the film, but there was a period there basically where Kurt Russell was directing. He was directing the film, and he apparently made shot lists every day for Cosmatos and said, here, this is what you need to get, this is what you need to get. And so I would love to see, it's probably pie in the sky, but I would love to see a Kurt Russell director's cut of Tombstone, because there is a great one to be made. And I've actually read the original script, the complete script, about a third of which got cut for the film. But it's one of the best scripts I've ever read, and yeah. I really have a feeling there's a great longer version of Tombstone that we haven't seen yet, or at least a special edition with Kurt Russell really involved to get all the behind the scenes stories and really good batch of deleted scenes and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that Blu-ray is just a slap in the face in comparison to the Vista Series DVD, let alone an actual Kurt Russell cut of the film, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know it's interesting because I know Shot Factory I have a friend at Shot Factory who would love to love to get his hands on that film. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Yeah, oh yeah. I actually have, it's interesting, I actually have a DVD full of daily footage from that film. I've got through various sources who worked on the film. I've been, because I'm a huge fan of this film. A lot of people know, and so people who worked on the film, I was sent a couple of DVDs full of daily footage of stuff that like was in the original script that they shot, the original director shot, and it never made it into the film. And so I love that film, and I just salivate every time I think about the possibility of a really truly good special edition of that.
That's one of those movies to me like Jaws or Goodfellas, no matter what, when it's, even if I'm flipping through TV and it's a TV version and I see it, I end up getting sucked into it and watching the rest. It's just one of those movies, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So that's it. So, I mean, in terms of catalog, that's a lot of big catalog titles for 1 year on a new format. It's exciting. If you're a fan of these big films and you're a fan of seeing them in the best quality, if you're a 4K fan, if you're that guy who's got like the home theater full on and the latest, equipment and stuff, it is a pretty exciting time for 4K. This is the first time we've really seen the floodgates kind of open. And so I hope it bodes well for this format for the future, because I cannot wait to get my hands on 2001 in 4K. I just can't wait. That's going to be the event of the year for me.
I can imagine for Andre as well.
Oh yeah, that's a movie I really, really want in 4K. My home theater is aching for that one.
Well, and it's still early in the year yet, so there's so much more news to go forward, I'm sure, and that's kind of more so what this show is going to be, more or less. But we will have special episodes where we focus on different things, so keep an eye out for those, and also we'll be having some other specials with Bill in the future as well, and I've got a few specials with Tim coming up here too, so keep an eye out for those. And I want to thank Bill for his time and insight once again, as usual, here on Talking Blue. It wouldn't be Talking Blue with the digital bits without him, so thank you, Bill.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's great to talk to you guys, and it's fun to, this is really all about like great films. You know, seeing great films, your favorite films in the best quality possible, and that's what we've always tried to do in the bits. In addition to kind of the behind the scenes of the industry and what's going on, it's really about like sharing these great films with people who maybe haven't seen them in the best possible quality, and it's fun to do that. So I'm happy to talk about it. It's great.
Indeed, we are here to fight for our right for Blu-ray. Anyway, that was bad.
No, physical media, man. The thing about physical media is this: is if I don't think physical media is going away anytime soon, as I think I've probably said before. But if you want more great Blu-ray and 4K special editions, you got to buy the discs, because if they don't sell, the message the studio gets is, we'll just go digital, and that would be a shame, because I think we're going to lose out. I mean, obviously the best quality you can get is on disc is better than any kind of streaming, because of compression and bandwidth and all those issues that you get with streaming. And the bottom line is, if you have it on disc on your shelf, you know you can watch it anytime you want to, and the studio isn't going to take it away. Whereas if they were to pull it off of their digital service or off of Netflix or whatever, you're out of luck. So, it's also because of the disc. You know, the disc is an excuse to, the studios will fill up the disc with extras, and when you haven't got that reason to kind of do a lot of really good extras, then that stuff falls by the wayside too. So that great special edition experience becomes kind of the exception and not the rule, and that would be a shame as well.
Yeah, and that's something we've touched on here, and is something that has to be noted, is that the special edition features have really fallen off, especially with Blu-ray, considering, like you said, the studios took note that they don't need those things to push these releases. So unless you buy the big special editions, they're not going to continue to do that.
That's absolutely true. And that's, by the way, one of the reasons why The Last Jedi 4K is so remarkable, because it feels like an old school special edition, whereas some of the other stuff like Thor Ragnarok, and Guardians of the Galaxy, the special editions are good, but they have a feel of kind of a promotional aspect to them, like where you can tell it was the EPK, the promotional people, that did all the stuff, and it's kind of got this glossy salesmanship feel about it. They're trying to use that stuff as promotional material before the film comes out, or they show it on HBO First Look or whatever. And the extras on The Last Jedi are just for the fans. There's no salesmanship aspect of it all. It's basically just, if you like the film, here's just an unvarnished look behind the scenes, and that is so rare these days that it's worth supporting. I mean, even if you don't like the film, it is a special thing to see that kind of an experience now.
So, Andre, I also want to thank you for your time as well, and tell us where we can find you guys on various social media places, Bill.
Obviously, I'm on thedigitalbits.com or just digitalbits.com, and you can find me at Bill Hunt Bits on Twitter and Bill Hunt Bits on Facebook as well. And we also have a Digital Bits Twitter feed, but I tend to be on my personal one more often. So anybody who's a Bits fan, anybody who's a reader is welcome to follow me. And if you have questions, I tend to answer them a lot more often on at Bill Hunt Bits than the others. So,
Andre,
you can follow me at Andre Einherjad on Twitter. And also be sure to follow us at midnights_edge on Twitter.
That's right, we have a brand new official Twitter, so be sure to make sure you're following us there, and check us out on Patreon as well. And you can find me at Thomas Connors Jr. on Twitter, and always lurking around the Facebook group as well. So once again, thanks guys, and thank you guys for listening and joining us here on Talking Blue with the Digital Bits here on Midnight's Edge.
If you like this video, then please click the subscribe button. And don't forget to click the bell icon to be notified for all the latest uploaded content. Due to recent changes to YouTube's monetization policies, we'd also like to ask you to please consider supporting Midnight's Edge and its sister channel, Midnight's Edge After Dark, through Patreon. As thanks for their support, patrons will receive early notifications of mini-documentaries, special behind-the-scenes making of the Edge videos, bloopers, outtakes, lost episodes, and more. You can support the channel for as little as $1 a month. Be sure to check back for news and analysis on the corporate politics behind your favorite genre movies, as well as updates and discussion here at Midnight's Edge.